Okay, we're now in the SS mode of operation, and we're going to do a simulated acceleration run. We have 10 satellites here in the studio, which is obviously simulated. And in order to start the acceleration run, if you want to go for, there's two ways of doing it. If you want to go for a standard 0 to 60 or quarter-mile time or eighth-mile time, you have to do it from a standstill, obviously. In the other case, if you want to do a rolling start to get measurements like from 40 to 60 miles per hour, passing measurement and so on, you can do that without being at a complete stop. But in this case, we're simulating a complete stop run. So we're going to, when we're ready, when we know that we're in a safe environment, when there's no one else around us, we can't endanger anybody, and we're doing a proper controlled measurement, we are at a complete stop, and we push the Accel Run button. And now GTEC is showing a red screen indicating that it's ready to start the measurement. And basically, once you start the throttle, the GTEC will start accelerating. And there it is. There's your ET, and your first it'll be 60-foot time, and then eighth mile, 330-foot time, eighth mile, 0 to 60 mile per hour, and so on. What's important here to understand is the GTEC will continue measuring as long as you're accelerating. Once you start coasting, GTEC will consider that a stop of the measurement, and it'll stop the run. However, if you start braking rapidly, then it'll continue into a braking distance measurement as well. So coasting is what really turns the measurement off. Everything else continues. Whether you're continuing to accelerate or you start braking, the GTEC will continue measuring. Once it detects that you're coasting, which in this case we're still accelerating, but once it detects that you're coasting, it'll start to finish the run, and then it'll show you the results. Now, in this case, we have, this was an acceleration run, so we'll have 0 to 60 measurements, our quarter-mile measurements. Horsepower and torque measurement will not be available, but we'll look at these things first. This is what we call a results screen. This is a screen that gives you concise results that are most important for a particular run. And as soon as you make that run, it'll show you these results. And if you go ahead and do another run, it'll always go back to these results. It'll assume what you looked at last is that's the same type of run that you're doing again. So you can very quickly do several runs and average the results. And it's a great way of doing some quick measurements. So here we are looking at, for example, our 0 to 60 data. If we want, this is our result here, and if we want to go in deeper, we can look at the graph as well, and it shows us a graph. Now, what's important here is this is a speed versus time graph. What's important to notice here is that we have these little cross marks here, and these are our milestones. They represent 10 mile per hour increments. So, for example, there's our 40 mile per hour increment. If I click on it, there's a little yellow square that comes up on it. That's our reference point that we can look at our passing speed. So if we bring the cursor back to, let's say, we did it a little bit too long, so let me do it again. I held it too long, and I actually selected it. So now I go back to our other measurement here, like, for example, this. There it is. If I can get it right on, there it is. So for 40 to 60 mile per hour, that's our passing time. Now, this is very important because passing speeds is a very good way to measure performance of a car without being too hard on the drivetrain. It's a good way to indicate the performance and horsepower of the car with very, very consistent data that avoids all these inconsistencies due to wheel spin and so on. So it's a useful way, and a lot of the magazines use this passing speed as an indication of the power of the car. And that's basically what this graph is good for. So we'll go back and look at another graph here. This is our quarter-mile graph. Here's a quarter-mile result at a certain speed. But if we go into a graph, this actually now shows real-time replay of our quarter-mile run, with 60-foot time coming up, then 330-foot time, then there's going to be the eighth mile, or 0 to 60 in this case, and then eighth mile, and then it goes all the way up to a quarter mile, 1,000-foot time, and then a quarter mile. So these are all the milestones. What's important to notice here is that this is real time. If I want to speed it up, I can just click and it'll go all the way to the end. And so we can go back to any of these milestones and look and see exactly what our 1,000-foot time is and so on. A lot of guys will find the 60-foot time very valuable down here because it is a good indication of what your traction capability is and for that particular track and so on. So, And a lot of times guys will just go for the 60-foot time, or they'll only go for 8-mile time. And then once they start coasting down, this graph would obviously won't have all these milestones. Again, you have the help screen, which gives you information about that particular screen, like everywhere else. This is very valuable, these help screens, and make sure you use them because they will help you a lot in analyzing the data. Down here, obviously, this was not a horsepower and torque pull. This was an acceleration run, so there's no data available for horsepower and torque. There's our 60 to 0 braking distance. We didn't do any 60 to 0. We didn't come all the way to a complete stop. We started coasting, so it just gave us from 90 to 50 miles per hour. GTEC basically extracts whatever measurement you did, it'll do it without you necessarily having to tell it what measurement you're doing. It will do all the measurements it'll extract all the data that basically you did for that particular run. And then the last graph here is the G graph that you can look at to analyze the G data as well. This is the acceleration portion, and this is the braking portion or the deceleration portion of the track. This is valuable when you're doing certain traction information and so on. You can look at your graph and for the G's and so on. And that basically concludes our acceleration run with all the data that's available. We can go back to the results screen and look at this information again, or we can go back to the files that this is recorded in and so on. And that is the information on the acceleration run on the GTEC.